Welcome to another vintage fishing reel service video. In this episode, we have a bait casting reel. That's about all I can say about it. I don't see any evidence on the exterior whatsoever as to who the maker of this might have been. Of course, back in the day, and I have no idea if this dates to the 40s or the 50s or the 60s. I would guess on the older end of that spectrum. But you certainly didn't go to a Walmart or a Meijer or probably a Cabela's or a Bass Pro Shops to buy your fishing tackle. In most cases, you went to the local hardware store. And I suspect there were a number of manufacturers that made kind of generic reels that, kind of as trade reel type deals that would go to local hardware stores, and maybe maybe it wasn't a reel they wanted to put their name on in terms of stamping it or engraving it on the reel. And I would guess that's the case here, unless I find something as I take it apart. It appears to be entirely unmarked. So I bought another reel, and this sort of came with the deal. So my mind, I really didn't pay anything for it. It's not the reason I bought the thing. I bought another reel, and this, like I said, just came with it. But kind of neat. I really love the Bakelite handle knobs on it, and I'm not going to just let it sit like that, all dirty and dry. Might as well take it apart and see what's inside and see if it can be working again, working like it should. It does have this little bait clicker here, although not a very impressive bait clicker. Maybe that's broken or just needs serviced. It has a level wind feature, so that maybe makes me think it's not on the really old spectrum of these old German silver bait casters. And of course, when people say German silver, I don't think there's much, if any, real silver in it. It's some kind of a nickel and copper alloy of some kind. It looks like one would hope that the pawl is still in there for running that. I don't really know what this feature is for, other than maybe cleaning off the line, or I don't know. I'm not a really bait caster aficionado. It does have this, so if you back this off, you can hear the play in the spool, and it changes the tension on the spool. So if you turn that in, now you can't hear any movement. So it's kind of basically a spool tensioner to presumably you can kind of adjust that to help reduce backlash to some extent, depending on the weight of your lure. Now the handles knobs on this are Bakelite again. This one, just by working it, I've sort of gotten it to move, but it's real tight. This one, not so much. So this handle will come off and will be put into some penetrating oil to soak for a while. And so hopefully without breaking that Bakelite, we can get those loosened up. Okay, I guess we'll start it. Again, I'm not a bait caster kind of aficionado, so I have no idea. I've been into number of bait casters I've been into, I could count on one hand. So we'll just carefully see what's in here. Okay, looks like obviously really dry. Watch my screws there. Obviously really dry in there, but looks like all brass parts. And I'm just trying, it looks like, let's see here. Yeah, so this little adjuster here, it looks like it pushes that plate up and down, and that that little spring there. Trying to see. Doesn't look really like that. Maybe you kind of have to, I don't know, that spring doesn't look like it rides. On the spool itself, unless you have to kind of push it in when you put it back together. See that little spring there? Let's see here. Get this back into the correct configuration. So when you put that together, that spring right there actually rides against this flat face here, and not against the spool itself. The question is whether when you put it back together, maybe you have to stick a kind of a screwdriver in there and get that working up against the spool. The other thing I know, I'm just holding this together with my fingers, but I've got it lined up with the screw holes, and now I notice that this thing is now springing back, and I suspect that's the way what it's supposed to do. It wasn't doing that before, so that must help hold the line down against the level lined apparatus here. But that's now springing. It wasn't before, and I'm wondering what's suddenly making it spring. Okay, it looks like it's supposed to, this little thing here rides up against this. So this actually creates the tension to make this spring work. So interesting, finding out things as I go here. Whoa, the little pinion gear will come right off of there, but we'll get the spool out of there. Your pinion gear, let's see. No, okay. Okay, that's keyed and it's square, so that fits down over a square part of the shaft here. And then here's your worm gear for the level wind feature. And of course, when that gets reassembled, you have to get this thing into the guide there, like that. And then it almost looks to me that these crossbars are sort of quote-unquote riveted in there. It doesn't look like you can take off the crossbars or the foot thing, that screw there. And see here. No, okay, there's that. And then there's this little cover here. Okay, yeah, the pole's way over here. And so here's the little plate that went over that, and then the screw that went in there, and then okay, I just think that's the pawl like stuck in there. I'm gonna see. I don't think it's gonna pull out. Not with those anyway. It might need some lubricant in there. I'm gonna go put a little bit of lubricant in there, but I put a little penetrant in there. Now I gotta try to get hold of that thing and try to get it out. Aha! It's starting to come out now. There it comes. There it comes. So there's the pawl. And it looks like it's double-sided. So I'm guessing if one side wears out, you can flip it over and use the other side. It looks totally symmetrical to me. But there's the pawl. And so now we should be able to, yes, pull the worm gear entirely out. So I want to make sure I don't lose this stuff. So there's my side plate screws, the pawl, the cap, and the screw for the pawl cap. And so now this bait clicker here, looks like it's really worn. It's almost like people just kept the bait clicker on all the time, and it just wore the tip of the bait clicker clean off. And this thing here looks out of round. But to me the point on that bait clicker looks really worn. So of course, if you move it in, it should still reach into the gears to make the sound when you turn it on. But that might be why it's not making a nice sharp sound. It's just kind of a little rattle. But I think that's pretty much all there is to this thing, other than cleaning and lubrication. So a lot of the plating on this here I believe is largely dirt. So that'll come off, and it's probably going to be nice and silver under there. I don't know if somebody tried to clean this or if it's just worn off, but the plating has come off. And I might try a little experiment where I take this to the wire wheel and see if I can polish up the underlying metal. If this was some kind of a real rare reel and so on, I'd just clean it, and you don't want to mess with all that. But just for fun, I might see if I can. This is obviously not something that's extremely rare, valuable, one of a kind or rare of a kind. I might just see if that metal underneath the plating polishes up and get that a little bit nicer looking. So yeah, I'm just gonna clean these parts up. We didn't pull out the main gear yet. And it's not wanting to just push out of there. Oh, there it comes. There it comes. So that's going to work a lot more smoothly, I think. We get that. That's pretty hard in there. Okay, so there's the main gear assembly. So, and obviously I'm not messing with that spring. So we'll get this in the parts tray and get all this hopefully cleaned up. And probably take this whole line off here too. I've got some reproduction line like this that I can put back on it. But I want to get that spool all cleaned up. Okay, I'm back from the sink and did some scrubbing and so on the parts. And a lot of what looked like missing plating and corrosion and stuff was just dirt, but of course this side obviously has lost its external plating, and this is still scummy dirt here. But rather than take the wire wheel to it, I thought, well, maybe, yeah, there's still a lot of that. Some of that's just scum rather than exposed interior. But I thought, well, maybe I could just hit this with some steel wool first and see what happens. And then if I decide I want to go further, I can. But of course, this steel wool would probably take off some of that plating too. So you don't want to be too aggressive where there's still plating left on there. Yeah, it's definitely taking off the plating, but that's going to come off anyway. I'm just curious the extent to which that would shine up with a little bit more aggressive, like a wire wheel. And if so, if you could, again, I wouldn't recommend doing this with a collector, reel, but I just want to have some fun and see if I could get that metal to shine again, and then maybe put some clear coat on there and to keep it shiny and from corroding. Another thing I might try first before I do that is maybe a little bit of what the heck do they call it? It's can't remember the brand name, but for to remove tarnish off of metal, Tarnex. Maybe try Tarnex on there and see what happens. But again, every time you try to hit this to get off the oxidation, you run the risk of removing the remaining plating that's on there. Yeah, that plating just wants to flake right off. I'm going to go out and put some Tarnex on there and just see what happens. Okay, so I tried the Tarnex. I didn't immerse the thing. I just sort of poured some on there and let it set for a minute or so. And it may have, obviously there was some brown coming off on the rag, but so it may have done a little bit. And it probably looks pretty good like that. And of course it's not really heavily modified, and so you could leave it like that. I just kind of want to touch it to the wire wheel once and just see what that looks like. So I'll be right back. So there it is after hitting it with the wire wheel. It looks pretty nice, except for you probably would want to kind of run it all in the same direction, because there's kind of some differences in the shine based on which way the wheel was running. Probably microscopic scratches in the metal from it, but it looks pretty good. Again, you wouldn't want to do this on a collectible reel or a high dollar. Of course, you can do whatever you want on your own reel, but and of course, if you do restore one like this, you wouldn't want to sell it as original. If you did sell it, or let people know that you were playing with it and it's been restored. But I'm just having fun with this, so I'm almost inclined to go ahead and do this side and see how that polishes up. Okay, back from the wire wheel. That didn't turn out too bad. Obviously, most of the plating was flaking off anyway. So, it doesn't look too bad. And of course, with some really fine grades of sandpaper, you can even get out the swirl marks. Alright, so now I'm just going to clean up this main gear shaft a little bit. Alright, so let's go back and start putting this thing back together. So let's see here. I typically oil these. I guess that's what I'm going to do. Because this one, the reel, when you cast it, it doesn't have a free spool feature. So the whole reel, if I remember correctly, spins with the spool. Why that thing is so tight in there, I don't know. Get this off of here. Get that on there. I'll clean off this little shim washer here on the other side of that. I'm going to take this off for a second and see what's going on here. I think it just had some, I think it might just have some corrosion or gunk in there. There, it's spinning a lot better now. Just trying to spin the shaft in there to get some of that. I mean, I put penetrant in there, but it just might have had a little more residue inside there yet. Now that gear goes on a certain way, and I've forgotten which. Trying to look at the shiny end of it. I'm going to guess it goes on that way. We'll find out, because those are slanted teeth. And I think I'm going to put a little grease underneath that where that gear rides. And I want to check I think these gears have to be lined up. Okay, it looks like I guessed right on that. And put a little oil in this pivot area of this thing. And I don't think that needs any oil. I don't know, maybe I'll put a little bit on there. And that has like, well, no. So I put the oil in there. All right. Now we gotta worry about getting this worm gear back in there. And get a little oil here and here for now. Get the rest of it later. examine which end of the pole we're going to stick in there. I probably should put some oil on there. Make sure that's tracking. And put our cap back on. And our screw. I might get a little grease around the base of that gear where that rides. And of course on the teeth. And now grease this gear. That was one of the things with this reel, is that it looks to be unbroken. There's a little wear on the bait clicker, but it was just dry. There really hardly any evidence of grease residue whatsoever. And now this thing's got to be, okay, that's on there correctly. And I forgot also to get some oil in that bushing there. But this seems like this thing should, well, maybe not. Maybe it's this little nub here on the end of that plate that meets the spool to slow it down. And this is just some kind of tension spring to push that piece back down. So I'm going to not worry about that spring right now and see what happens. Okay, that ain't right, because, okay, let's see, nope. So you kind of got to put it on and twist to make sure that the end of that thing gets where it needs to be next to that plate, so that it springs back into place. Somebody had it off, somebody had the cover off and didn't get that back on properly, and that thing wasn't springing down like it was supposed to. Oh, I don't have this in the track. I forgot to pay attention to that line guide and make sure it was in the track. So you got so many things to kind of line up at the same time, that those two springs and this and that. And hopefully that fixed the problem with the worm gear, because for a second it's not tracking back the other direction. It's only going one way. Hits that side, but when you're winding forward, it's not tracking back. I wonder if one of those, there it goes. Yeah, it's hitting that side, not wanting to come back. definitely spinning a lot more freely than it did. You can now imagine that thing actually casting. So there she is, all cleaned up and ready to cast, nice and smooth. And found this, well, this rod I had for a couple of weeks. I found it for $1, and this is one of the old steel rods. So that rod is not fiberglass or anything like that, but steel, and it's only about a 3.5 foot rod or so, kind of like a old vintage dock rod or something like that, with this red bakelite on it. It seemed like a really nice match for that little reel. So that completes the service and restoration of that one, and maybe this summer I can take it out fishing and pop a video of that. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching.